Hey guys. All right. We are here live on YouTube and on Instagram. I hope everybody is doing really well this Friday. And here we go. So today I want to talk about a topic that, wow, it comes up every day for everybody. I talk about it all the time with pretty much all of my clients. It comes up in your life, it comes up in my life as you move about the world. The topic is boundaries. So, this is a particularly challenging topic for anybody who has survived trauma. And no matter what type of life you've lived, boundaries can be difficult. Not everybody has been shown appropriate boundaries, even if you haven't had trauma in your life. Boundaries are those tricky things that not everybody has understood how to use or has been shown appropriate healthy boundaries. And that gets really tricky when you're trying to have a healthy relationship or trying to have a healthy work relationship, or when you have kids and then you need to show them appropriate boundaries. And that gets really difficult. You end up in tricky situations, or you end up overdoing it. You end up as a people pleaser. You end up exhausted. You end up with a chronic illness. You end up in situations that you don't want to be. At first, it seems like what you're doing will be okay, right? You start with a little bit like, oh, I'll help this person with this thing. It'll be fine. I can do this. But by not setting a boundary for yourself, you end up taking on way too much. And you get yourself into situations where you're way in over your head. And I'm sure this resonates with people everywhere. So, where I want to begin, though, is with the body. Because what ends up happening is I end up talking to people, they end up showing up in my virtual office talking to me about their bodies and their emotions, because your body holds a story about your past. And it's one which you're either in tune or you're not. Like, do you have awareness of it? Or have you gone through your life disconnected, disassociated, numbed out? Awareness is so critical. And in a way, that's where boundaries begin. And I'm going to get to that. So, people who have lived in toxic, abusive, traumatic relationships struggle to connect with their bodies often, to know how they feel. They grapple with awareness. And to know your body's story, to know your somatic self, to know your boundaries. This is essential to being able to hold your own boundaries so that you can distinguish between self and the other. It can help you identify what emotions and struggles and issues are yours versus another person. Because if you don't know, if you're not connected to yourself and you don't know what emotions and experience you're having, you might be taking on another person's stuff. And often this is what is happening. So those who suffer from trauma are often suffering with boundary issues. They either have relationships that are overly enmeshed, are codependent, therefore lacking boundaries altogether. They have trouble saying no. They find themselves to be the people pleasers of the world. And then boundaries can be challenging to adopt later in life. So, when you start to set boundaries, why is it challenging later in life when you've had trauma in your past? What I find and what I find people rub up against is that their old unintegrated parts these parts of themselves that are stuck in trauma start to feel at risk of abandonment or literally of dying in a way. These parts of themselves that are trapped in the past that were not loved, like for example, parts of themselves, like say their 12-year-old part. So take a 43-year-old person who at 12 was abandoned. That 12-year-old self is still stuck in that person somewhere. It was never healed, and that's called an unintegrated part of self. So that part of herself is coming up every time she wants to say no but can't. That part of herself is screaming out for help. It's a little confusing, and I'm not being totally clear right now, but it helps if you're the person. And it's that part of self that's unintegrated. And once that part can get integrated, then that person can set an appropriate boundary. So if your primary caregiver didn't teach you healthy boundaries, we have to integrate that trauma so you can then begin to set healthy boundaries. When you set healthy boundaries, you can get domain over yourself. You have space to know what you want, how you feel, and how to separate yourself from others. You can begin to create more awareness over your body, your experience, your needs, your wants, your desires, and then how to separate yourself from others. If setting boundaries is difficult for you, that's okay. Don't be hard on yourself, right? Most people, as I mentioned before, have trouble in different ways to set boundaries for different reasons. One of the most simple ways to set boundaries, and I've mentioned this before, is to say no. If you don't know anything else, you can just say, no. And then either hang up the phone, walk away, or just a blanket no statement is a really simple no and a way to set a boundary. What I'd like to do today, however, is to do a really short somatic boundary setting session with you guys. So I will invite you to bring your eyes to close. And I want you to notice, take a deep breath. And then another one. And start to settle into your body. And I want you to notice how your body's feeling. Start to connect to your body. And I want you to notice where your body is connected to the ground or the chair, wherever you're sitting. And then I want you to simply touch your arms. And notice how that feels. Kind of drop into your body. Notice where your feet are touching the ground, the earth. Feel the earth holding you. Good. And just be there for a moment. And then slowly start to come out. These are your boundaries, right? This is your body. This is your boundary, where your feet are touching the ground, where your seat is on the chair, your arms. This is your domain, your space. You have domain over your body And no one can step into your space without you allowing it. And anytime you want or need to connect to your space, that is a really simple way to go in there and to remember to connect and bring awareness to yourself. And it's really important to connect to yourself so you can separate yourself from others. It gets really confusing when you take on other people's stuff. And the best way to stop doing that is to go inwards and to quiet the noise from outside. And to recognize and notice and become aware of what is yours and shut out the outside world. Happy Friday. Have a beautiful weekend. Say no when you need to. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next week.